Would anyone else like to share any ideas from your discussion? I did hear an interesting chat in my room about basically the differences in the focus on the skills that generally in general English, there'll be a focus on listening and speaking, whereas in academic English, the focus will be on reading and writing. That is pretty much true. It's not to say that the other two skills respectively are ignored, but that is absolutely true. Look, just a couple of points, or a point for each one. In terms of the syllabus, it is a communicative syllabus in general English. It's level driven. It's often linked to the CEFR as you go through the levels to develop communicative competence. EAP pathway is pretty much goal driven. The students have a goal, whether it be a score, a pathway final entry score, or the needs for their course. It's very much goal driven. In terms of content, in general English, the language content, grammar or vocabulary is very broad and really can cover up the totality of the English language. It's much more, and it's verb phrase driven as well. It's much more limited to academic discourse in the EAP context, with a heavy emphasis on dealing with texts as well. The thing about the students is an interesting one. This is a significant difference in terms of their goals. In a general English context, you could have 20 goals in 20 students, but there is really an absence of this high stakes pressure that they're under. That's quite different to the university pathway EAP context. The students do have this high stakes goal binding them together, unified goal. So that's just a little snapshot of some differences. But the thing is, just before we move on, so the thing is, the teacher training is based on general English, right? TESOL training, and really does not prepare teachers for an EAP context, let alone a high stakes pathway one. So there's a lot of learning, to go back to Alina's question, part one, there's a lot of learning on the spot once you are in that EAP context. But as a starting point, what can help us is, so what skills and competencies do EAP teachers need to have? So thanks, Mariella. So here we can bring in this competency framework for teachers of English for academic purposes. This framework was developed by, the link is there, by BALIAP, the British Association of Lecturers of EAP, in 2008. And it appears, as far as I know, it appears to be the only document in existence that specifies the skills and competencies that are required for an EAP teacher. So it's very useful because it can act as a basis for EAP teacher training courses, such as the one that we did. And it's also very useful for professional development within an organisation. I just want to show a couple of screenshots from the framework. So thanks, Mariella. So in terms of academic practice, a teacher will have reasonable knowledge of the academic context that the students are going into, i.e. universities. Next, in terms of next one, in terms of EAP students, a teacher will need to understand student needs and also the role of student critical thinking. Now, okay, thanks, Mariella. Now, so this is really telling us, this first two, is that EAP teaching is really driven by a deep understanding of students' needs in their target language. That's our entry point. That's our basic understanding. Just to bring in one more screenshot from the framework. So in terms of EAP curriculum, one of the key components, as we've discussed before, is teaching students to deal with texts, both reading texts and writing texts. So in this is because, thanks Mariella, there is this heavy focus on text processing and text production. So moving on. So in relation to this key component of text processing and text production, an EAP teacher needs knowledge and understanding of, amongst other things, these text production skills and strategies. So this is in the first column. Thanks, Mariella. And the teachers also need an ability, therefore, to use a text-based approach for teaching, writing, and speaking skills. So, and this is then indicated by an ability to integrate text processing and text production. Integrate being a key word there, because, thanks Mariella, this is telling us that there is a very profound link between reading and writing. So the reading-writing link is fundamental to our teaching of academic texts. In other words, we are teaching students how to write from sources. So considering, okay, next, thanks, Mariella. So writing from sources is key, making the reading-writing link and writing from sources. So this means that we need to have our students integrate ideas and findings of authors in academic texts that they read, that we help them read, to use in their own writing. So we have a question. We might extend this to 5 minutes or so. So if that reading, writing link and writing from sources is key, so what skills do we need to teach our students so they can write from sources? So just ponder that while I put that into the chat box as well. And of course, that means what skills do we have to be familiar with ourselves, right? Okay, so I have another discussion for 5 minutes. Thank you, Sophie. Welcome back. So I did listen to a group and I did hear a discussion about matters related to sources, finding sources, knowing different referencing conventions, and that's all part of it. I'd just like to reveal some key skills now, thanks Mariella, and just look at them and then get any additional ideas that you had. So of course, reading from the left, the number one dot point, and Mariella, if you can just do one more little animation with the supersized exclamation mark. Well-developed reading skills. Those of us who've been teaching academic English for a while know well and truly if the students have not understand their readings, they just cannot even begin to think about writing. So number one, and number one. and it remains a problem in writing. It's not the writing that's the problem, it's the reading that's the problem. The whole reading-writing link is, profound. Other things we need to do is understand the writer's purpose. It's okay to understand the key ideas, the points, and summarise the articles. However, understanding the writer's purpose is a new step up. Critical thinking, of course, questioning, and so on. Researching appropriate academic sources, somebody mentioned. Then that's more part of the reading on the left. And then this like dual interaction between what happens in writing. So paraphrasing and summarising, obviously, referencing, citation, indicating the relationship between citations and writer's purpose. So this is the bigger thing about synthesising texts. You have an opinion, you have a point you want to make in your writing, and you bring in citations to either support or as a counter argument to your ideas. So that's what that's all about. And basically, in a nutshell, that's synthesising sources. You read 5 articles, how can you refer to all of them in your writing? Would anyone like to share any other skills that you discuss that are needed? Or put in the chat box maybe. Okay. Thanks, Mariella. We're not going to have a chance to do this, but if we just delve a little bit deeper in writing for a moment, there are some key concepts, as any of us here who are practicing teachers will know, that we have to be familiar with and know how to teach: academic style, hedging, this notion of voice, rhetorical functions, which is the purpose of our ideas, old new information flow for cohesion, nominalisation, so we don't begin every sentence with a subject verb, that kind of thing. So these are all things to familiarise yourselves with. And again, Alina, to address your question part 2, how do we learn all this? Next slide. Okay, almost next slide, Alina, and everyone else, about how you can gather all this knowledge. A little reflection task. So if you are a practicing EAP pathway teacher, what do you find enjoyable, stimulating about teaching in this context? Maybe some of the things that Maria mentioned earlier, or what do you find challenging? Do you use or do you know of any supports for your teaching? And if you are yet to teach on an EAP pathway course, what are you looking forward to? And do you have any concerns? I think this is best done in an open forum now, if we can give that a go. So it'd be great if any practicing teachers would like to share any of their ups and downs, but also of any support that you know that can start answering questions like Alina's.
Yes, I would love to hear that.
All right, so hopefully people won't hold back. But at the same time, if you are new, please feel free to share. What are you looking forward to, and do you have any concerns? So a little bit of open, shared reflection here would be great. All right, I'll start. I'll model. So what do I find enjoyable? That it is constantly intellectually stimulating. You will never go into a class saying, oh my God, do I have to talk about like hobbies and food? Not that there's anything wrong with that, because that's right for that different context. But it'll never be like that. It's constantly stimulating. You're learning because you're reading interesting texts. So that's a stimulating thing.
Okay, as one who has yet to do this and applied for a job recently to do it at a local university, I would relish the prospect of working with a more motivated cohort of students than those that are just generally enrolled, particularly here on the Gold Coast, where we have a lot of students who are coming here for the lifestyle experience of living by the beach and being in Australia. And so at times it can be a little bit like Animal House. I still thoroughly enjoy what we do, and I enjoy relating the language to them and getting their perspective on life in our country. And I think that a big part of that pastoral care would obviously be taken to the next level in an EAP program, given the high stakes nature of it.
Yes, yeah. Nothing more to add to that. Well said.
Yeah, I agree.
Very well said. Any other reflections or ideas from the floor? Anyone?
I could add something if you like.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, I've just come from teaching general English where I had 4 hours a day with the class, and I was told, make sure they're speaking English and having fun. And so I could do whatever I wanted with them, which after a while, you know, it was great. I did whatever I wanted, but after a while, I started running out of ideas after 6 months thinking, oh, what else can I come up with? So I quite like walking in. Now I've been only 3 weeks into teaching an academic course, and I like that it's all there for me. I don't have to scratch my head and come up with kind of, what am I going to do today? There's none of that, but I am finding it hard to get through all the content. I'm finding there's so much that we have to get through that there's no time to delve more deeply into things that I think might be interesting or useful for them, because we've got these assessments rolling in, and it seems like we're just kind of focusing on the assessments rather than, you know, I quite enjoy helping them overall with their English, not just focusing on the assessment needs you to be able to do this. So this is what we're going to focus on. So I'm feeling a bit hemmed in by these assessments, but at the same time, it's quite nice to have a goal to work towards.
Oh, thanks so much for Greg. I don't think that's an uncommon sentiment at all. But like, we are professionals, we know you just have to get comfortable and confident in knowing, I know what these students need to know. I know my students very well. I know that if I focus on this, that this will be the most beneficial from my students, even if that means you don't do exercise X, Y, and Z or task A and B. So if you focus on what your students really need to know, I think you just have to get confident in doing that. We know we're professionals. Yeah, great point. Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a good point also about the structure. It sounds like you're enjoying having that structure that you haven't had for quite some time. So you've used up all your creativity, let's just say, and now it's time for some more serious, but then that has in itself some challenges as well. That as Marcella said, with time, confidence, getting to know the content, the course and the students, you learn to reprioritize things, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Add to that, Greg, I think I really enjoyed listening to that perspective because it is such a common sentiment. But I think something that EAP teachers get really good at is also feedback. Or reading what student needs are, and then also providing that feedback to students and really targeting specific needs. So I second what Mariella and Marcella were saying, that you learn to read your cohort, your group, and know what, what needs to be targeted. So you develop that agency over time, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that makes sense. It feels a bit like I've started a whole new job, even though I'm at the same centre and, they all look the same, but everything's kind of different. But yeah, I do feel like I really hope that when I finish this course, that they let me go back and do exactly the same course again, so I can start feeling, now I've got my head around things. Once I've got my head around all these assessments and things, it'll be easier to, like you said, relax a bit and know if we skip a few bits, but focus on others. Yeah. But at this stage, when I'm new to it all, I want to be a good boy and do everything. Make sure I do it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Any other final things to share? That's been great. Thanks.
Yeah, I was going to say, I completely understand that. I started off my career as like a English teacher for like international kindergarten, and now I've gone to the other end of the spectrum, and now I'm teaching EAP. So I did a big jump. And yeah, I was trying to like do everything in the curriculum, in the syllabus, and try and get it all done. And I guess understanding what I can leave out but still like get them to succeed and reach their goals is one of the most difficult things. And there was one more thing that I found difficult when I started teaching EAP was I went from teaching like a homogenous kind of group of students in an international setting to like a very mixed kind of class at a school in Australia. And it was much easier to target certain skills when I knew kind of everybody's kind of English, like their English level and background. And then moving into like this mixed EAP context, I was like, oh, these people understood what I was talking about, but these people didn't quite get it. And that was one of the other things, trying to balance that out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
But that's another good point. It's important to be flexible and to
Yeah.
adapt. Yeah.
Yeah,
It sounds like
exactly.
you've done that well. Yeah.
exactly. There's a lot of positivity in this cohort. Isn't that good? The vibe is very positive. I think, unless anyone wants to share another idea, can we just go to the next slide? Thank you. All right. So look, here are the most helpful things in my opinion. So don't forget that we have already, English Australia has already done that webinar on teaching English for academic purposes, making the transition. So you can go back. If you go back, you'll be able to find the recording and the slides for that. The BALIAP framework of competencies I referred to before generated this textbook, which is kind of like the Bible for EAP teacher training. And some of you will be familiar with that. It's EAP Essentials, a teacher's guide to principles and practice. And it covers the teaching of, well, the whole EAP pathway context. And then it's divided into chapters for each of the 4 skills and assessments as well. And it also includes nice communicative activities in relation to the teaching of the different skills. It's a very, very, I recommend it strongly for teachers, novice, in this context. And the next one, EAP Essentials Practical Advice, that is also from some of the authors of EAP Essentials, but there are lots and lots of little messages, not blogs, but nice little ideas on a range of areas. Using English, the 4th one there, Using English for Academic Purposes, that is a website, again, some of you might be familiar, UFAP, and that has a lot of exercises that you can do with students to support what you are doing in your classes in relation to writing, reading, vocabulary, and so on. The next one is from the University in New Zealand, has an excellent resource base there for academic writing. And because it's the big elephant in the room at the moment with AI, put it down the bottom there, let it not dominate, even though it is. ChatGPT, how worried should we be? So that's worth having a little look as well. And I think I've overdone my welcome. I think we need to go to the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcella. That was really interesting. So much more to talk about as well. Maria, I'll hand over to you.
We just thought we'd end with a bit of a reflection. If you are thinking of this transition from general English to academic English, what are you currently doing? If either you've already made the transition, or you're thinking about it, what are you currently doing? And how are your centres supporting you? We just thought we'd open up for some general discussion. If you need to go, feel free to do so. But if you can stay a few more minutes and join in this part, this reflection, that would be really good.